My parents packed their suitcases for my sister's Sweet 16 cruise vacation while I stood in the doorway, confused about why my bags weren't ready. My father tossed a stack of my sister's homework on the kitchen table and said, "Someone has to finish all of this or she'll fail the semester. Consider it your contribution to her birthday." When I asked how long they'd be gone, my sister laughed and said, "Long enough for you to finally be useful for once." I didn't say a word. That was 8 days ago. When they returned home this morning, I was gone, and so was every photo of me in the house. I should probably back up. My name is Marcus, and I'm 17, well, I was 17 when this started. I'm 18 now, as of 3 days ago. My sister Haley just turned 16, which you already know because her birthday became the single most important event in our family's collective consciousness for the past 6 months. The cruise cost somewhere north of $12,000. I know because I heard my mother on the phone with my grandmother, defending the expense by saying Haley deserves something special after working so hard in school. Haley's GPA hovered around 2.1. Mine was 3.8, but we don't talk about that. The dynamic in my house had always been skewed, but it reached absurd levels sometime around Haley's freshman year. Before that, things were just subtly unfair. She got the bigger bedroom when we moved, her piano lessons continued while mine stopped due to budget constraints, her college fund received regular deposits while mine sat untouched. I noticed these things but convinced myself they were coincidental or that I was being oversensitive. Then Haley discovered she could weaponize her tears. The first time I watched it happen with full awareness, we were at dinner. She'd forgotten to study for a history exam, panicked the night before, and asked to borrow my laptop to access the study guides I'd made for the same class the previous year. I said sure, but I needed it back by 9 because I had an essay due. She agreed. At 10:30, I knocked on her door. She screamed at me to go away. At 11 o'clock, I knocked again. She emerged with red-rimmed eyes and told our parents I'd been harassing her all night while she was trying to study. Dad looked at me like I'd committed an unforgivable offense. Mom ushered Haley back to her room with soothing words. Nobody asked for my side. The laptop appeared on my desk the next afternoon with 3 new dents in the casing and a cracked screen. When I showed my parents, Haley cried and said I was trying to get her in trouble because I was jealous of her. Mom made me apologize to her for causing a scene. I learned to stay quiet after that. The pattern repeated with increasing frequency. Haley would create a problem, I'd be blamed for it or expected to fix it, and any protest on my part transformed me into the villain. My parents weren't stupid people. Dad worked as an accountant, Mom managed a dental office, but around Haley, their critical thinking dissolved. She'd perfected the art of playing victim, and they'd become devoted audience members. Which brings us to the cruise. 3 weeks before her birthday, my parents sat us both down for a family meeting. These meetings only happened when they'd already made a decision and wanted to pretend we had input. Dad explained they'd been planning something extraordinary for Haley's Sweet 16. An 8-day Caribbean cruise, departing 2 days after her actual birthday. The whole family would go. I felt a flicker of something positive. A vacation sounded good. We hadn't taken a real trip together in years. Marcus will need to stay home, obviously, Mom added, as if this were the most natural conclusion in the world. Someone has to watch the house, and Haley specifically requested this be a special trip for just the 3 of us. The flicker died. Haley smiled at me, saccharine and triumphant. "You understand, right? It's my birthday." I didn't argue. Experience had taught me that arguing only made things worse and changed nothing. I nodded, said I understood, and excused myself to my room. Behind me, I heard Mom tell Haley how mature she was being about including her brother in the planning process by telling him directly. The next 3 weeks crawled by. Haley's excitement filled every corner of the house. New clothes appeared daily. Mom took her for a spa day to prepare for all the photos. Dad bought an expensive underwater camera. Haley's friends came over constantly to squeal about how lucky she was, and she'd always make sure these conversations happened within my earshot. "I just feel so blessed," she'd say, her voice dripping with performance. "Some people don't get families that appreciate them like this." I spent most of that time applying for jobs. My birthday was coming up 3 days into their trip, and I decided I needed an escape plan. 18 meant legal independence. 18 meant I could open my own bank account without their names on it. 18 meant possibilities. The day before they left, I secured a position at a warehouse on the edge of town. Full-time hours, benefits after 90 days, and they needed someone to start immediately. I told my parents I'd found a part-time thing to keep busy while they were gone. They barely listened. Dad was busy checking luggage weight restrictions, and Mom was making sure Haley had packed enough sunscreen. Then came the morning of their departure. Their flight left at 6 a.m., which meant they were up at 4, dragging suitcases down the stairs and loading the car. I'd set my alarm to say goodbye, still clinging to some obsolete notion that this was what families did. I found Dad in the kitchen, checking his phone while Mom did a final sweep of Haley's room to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything crucial. "Morning," I said. He grunted acknowledgement. Haley thundered down the stairs, her energy impressive for someone awake at this hour. She wore a new outfit, something with designer labels that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She saw me and her expression soured, like I'd ruined something by existing in the kitchen. Then Dad picked up the stack of papers from the counter and dropped them in front of me. Haley's homework needs to be done before we get back, or she'll fail 3 classes this semester. He said it casually, the way someone might mention taking out the trash. Teachers agreed to accept it late since she's on a family trip, but it has to be turned in Monday morning. Consider it your contribution to her birthday. I stared at the pile. English essays. Algebra problem sets. A history project requiring actual research. Easily 30 hours of work, probably more given it was Haley's homework and she'd likely ignored all the preliminary assignments leading up to these. You're joking, I said. Do I look like I'm joking? Dad's voice carried that edge that meant the conversation was over. You're staying here rent-free, eating our food. This is a small thing we're asking. I have a job starting Monday, then you'd better manage your time well. Mom appeared with Haley's neck pillow and phone charger. Marcus, don't make this difficult. It's already done. We've arranged it with her teachers. Just help your sister out for once. Haley leaned against the doorframe, examining her nails. Consider it practice for having actual responsibilities. Most people your age have jobs and school. You just have a few assignments to complete. These are your assignments, I said to her directly. Your classes. Your grades. She shrugged. And you're my brother. This is what family does. I looked at my parents, waiting for one of them to acknowledge how absurd this was. Neither did. They were already moving on, checking watches and calculating traffic times. The conversation had ended before it began. How long will you be gone? I asked. Haley's laugh was bright and cruel. Long enough for you to finally be useful for once. They left 20 minutes later. No goodbyes beyond a distracted wave from Mom. The house settled into silence, and I stood in that kitchen looking at the stack of work that wasn't mine, feeling something shift in my chest. It wasn't anger exactly. Anger was too hot, too immediate. This was colder. Clearer. I picked up the homework and carried it to my room. Then I opened my laptop and started making lists. The warehouse job started Monday morning at 7. I'd be working 10-hour shifts, 4 days a week to start. The pay was decent, better than decent, actually, especially for someone with no experience. The manager, a guy named Ron who looked perpetually exhausted but smiled when he talked, had explained they were desperate for reliable workers. He'd hired me on the spot after a 15-minute interview. You show up on time and work hard, you'll do fine here, he'd said. We've got people who've been here 20 years. Good benefits, room for advancement. You planning to stick around? I'd told him I was planning to stick around very much. Sunday, I woke up before dawn and started packing. Not everything, that would be too obvious if anyone happened to stop by, which they wouldn't, but still. I took clothes, my laptop, important documents I'd need. Birth certificate, social security card, school records. I'd been collecting these over the past weeks, requesting duplicates from the school office by claiming I needed them for college applications. I packed my favorite books, the watch my grandfather gave me before he died, a photo album from before Haley was born when family pictures included me. Everything fit in 2 large duffel bags and a backpack. Looking at them lined up on my bed, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. 18 years of life reduced to 3 bags. But 3 bags I could carry myself, which felt important. The photos took longer. We had them everywhere, covering the hallway walls, clustered on the mantel, filling albums in the living room cabinet. I started systematically going through each one. Any photo containing me got removed from its frame. Some I kept. Most I didn't need, they were lies anyway, frozen moments of forced smiles hiding years of imbalance. But I kept the ones from before Haley was born. The ones where Mom and Dad looked at me like I mattered. The photo of my first day of kindergarten where Dad had taken off work to walk me to the bus stop. The picture of Mom teaching me to ride a bike, her face bright with pride. I kept those because they felt like archaeological evidence of an extinct civilization, proof that things had once been different. For every photo I removed, I left the frame. Empty frames on every wall. Gaps in albums where pictures had been. I wanted them to see exactly how many times they'd documented moments I was part of, and then I wanted them to see those moments erased. If I didn't matter enough to be included in family vacations, then I didn't need to be included in family memories. The day stretched out. I finished the photos, cleaned my room thoroughly, and left it impersonal as a hotel. Then I sat down with Haley's homework. I didn't destroy it or throw it away. That felt petty. Instead, I read through every assignment carefully. The English essays asked her to analyze themes in books she clearly hadn't read. The algebra problems required showing work for concepts she'd slept through. The history project expected research about the Cold War, complete with citations and analysis. I put everything back in a neat stack on the kitchen table with a sticky note on top. Good luck. M. Then I waited for Monday. My birthday arrived without fanfare, which felt appropriate. I woke up at 5 a.m., showered, dressed in the work clothes I'd bought at a thrift store the previous week. I loaded my bags into my car, a 15-year-old sedan I'd bought myself 2 years ago with money from summer jobs. It ran poorly and looked worse, but the title had my name on it, which meant it was entirely mine. The warehouse was a 40-minute drive across town. I'd chosen it partially for the distance, far enough that randomly running into anyone I knew felt unlikely. The work was exactly what Ron had described: physical, repetitive, and straightforward. Unloading trucks, organizing inventory, scanning items. My body ached by the lunch break, but my mind felt quiet in a way it hadn't in years. Ron found me during my break. Forgot to get this from you earlier: emergency contact information. Company policy. I filled out the form, pausing at the contact section. I wrote down my grandmother's name and number. She lived 2 states away and we talked maybe twice a year, but she was the only family member who'd ever asked me direct questions about my life and waited for real answers. I'd called her the night before to explain I was moving out and starting a job, keeping details vague. She'd said, "About time, Marcus. You call if you need anything." No parents? Ron noticed the blank spaces. Complicated situation, I said. He nodded without pushing. Fair enough. You're an adult. None of my business unless you want it to be. That became the template for the next week. I showed up, worked hard, and kept to myself. A couple of coworkers tried making conversation. I was polite but distant. After a few days, they accepted I wasn't unfriendly, just private. The work exhausted me physically, which I appreciated. It left no energy for overthinking. I'd rented a room in a house 20 minutes from the warehouse. Found it on a community board posting: older woman named Patricia who owned a 3-bedroom place and rented 2 rooms to students and young workers. The rent was manageable with my new salary. My room was small, furnished simply with a bed, desk, and dresser. Patricia had shown me around with efficient kindness, explained house rules, and mentioned she'd lost her son in a car accident 5 years ago. Not looking to replace him, she'd said plainly. But I like having people around. House is too quiet otherwise. You keep your space clean, respect quiet hours, and we'll get along fine. I paid first month's rent and deposit in cash I'd been saving for 2 years. Money from birthday gifts, summer jobs, the occasional odd task for neighbors. I'd been preparing to leave without knowing I was preparing. Some part of me had been packing emergency supplies for years. The days blurred together. Work, home, sleep. I bought groceries, cooked simple meals, and fell into a routine that felt surreal in its normalcy. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody needed me to fix their problems or absorb blame for their mistakes. The silence in my rented room was clean, uncomplicated by resentment or manipulation. I didn't contact my parents. They didn't contact me either, which stung less than I'd expected. I'd imagined some part of them might notice I hadn't called, might wonder if I was okay. But they were on a cruise celebrating Haley's birthday, and I was the ghost they'd left behind to handle inconvenient realities. On day 6 of their trip, I went back to the house one final time. I still had my key. The place felt different, not like home, like a museum of someone else's life. I did one last walkthrough, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. In my old room, I left behind clothes that didn't fit, books I'd never liked, and all the participation trophies from activities my parents had signed me up for then stopped attending. I took one last thing: the family calendar hanging in the kitchen. Mom meticulously documented everything on it: doctor appointments, school events, work schedules. I flipped through the months. Haley's activities were color-coded in purple. Parent-teacher conferences for her, dentist appointments for her, her friends' birthday parties. My college application deadlines appeared in pencil, easy to erase. My actual birthday wasn't marked at all. I left the calendar on the kitchen table, open to this month. Used a red marker to circle today's date and wrote in my neat handwriting: Marcus turns 18. Then I locked the door behind me and drove back to Patricia's house. The next 2 days passed quietly. I worked, came home, and tried to imagine what would happen when they returned. Would they call the police? Would they worry? Part of me hoped they would. A larger part suspected they'd be angry I hadn't completed Haley's homework, and my absence would register as inconvenience rather than concern. On the 8th day, I woke early despite having the day off. Something felt different, though I couldn't name what. I made coffee in Patricia's kitchen. She was already up, reading the newspaper at the table. "You seem calmer," she observed. "When you moved in, you were like a cat ready to bolt. Settling in okay?" "Better than okay," I said honestly. "Good. You've got mail, by the way. Came yesterday." She pushed a small stack across the table. Most of it was junk, but one envelope stood out. School letterhead. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet, My final transcript. I'd requested it weeks ago as part of my quiet preparation for leaving. The grades stared back at me, neat columns of A's and B's. Proof I'd worked hard at something, even if nobody had been watching. Patricia noticed my expression. Good news? Evidence, I said. That I existed. She gave me a long, evaluating look but didn't pry. I appreciated that about her. She understood the difference between curiosity and invasion. My phone rang around 10. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Marcus? This is Mr. Henderson from school. Haley's guidance counselor. My stomach dropped. I need to talk to you about your sister's academic situation. Her teachers contacted me this morning about missing assignments. Apparently, there was an arrangement for her to submit work late, but nothing was turned in. Do you know anything about this? She went on a cruise for her birthday. Her homework was her responsibility. Your parents told her teachers you'd agreed to help complete the assignments while the family was traveling. My parents told the teachers that. Nobody asked me. I have a job. I didn't agree to anything. Silence stretched out. Then, I see. This is complicated. Haley's currently failing 3 classes. Without those assignments, she won't pass the semester. Is there any way? No, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. I'm not doing my sister's homework. She had all semester to complete it herself. Marcus, I understand you might be upset about being left behind on the family trip, but I'm not upset. I'm done. Those are different things. Where are you right now? Your parents have been trying to reach you. Have they? It wasn't a question. They're worried. They came home this morning and you weren't there. Your room is empty. They think something might have happened. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Something did happen. I turned 18 and moved out. I'm employed, I'm housed, and I'm fine. You can tell them that if they ask. Marcus, is there anything else school-related you need from me, Mr. Henderson? Because if not, I have errands to run. Another pause. No. Nothing else. But Marcus? Whatever's going on with your family, I hope you're making decisions you won't regret. I'm making decisions I should have made a long time ago. Thanks for calling. I hung up and stared at my phone. It rang again immediately, Mom's number. I declined the call. It rang again. Dad's number. Declined. Then a text from Haley, where are you? Mom and Dad are freaking out. I blocked all 3 numbers and set my phone to do not disturb. The calls kept coming throughout the day, filtered to voicemail I didn't check. I went about my errands, grocery shopping, picking up some books from the library, getting an oil change for my car, normal things that felt revolutionary in their ordinariness. Nobody was yelling. Nobody needed anything from me. I existed as myself, not as an extension of someone else's needs. That evening, Patricia knocked on my door. You've got visitors. Your parents, I assume? They seem agitated. My heart rate spiked. Did you tell them I live here? Told them I had a tenant named Marcus but wasn't in the habit of discussing my tenant's business with strangers. They're insistent, though. Might want to handle it before they make a scene. I followed her downstairs. Through the front window, I could see my parents' car in the driveway. Dad paced the front lawn. Mom sat in the passenger seat, her phone pressed to her ear. Haley slumped in the back, scrolling through her phone. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Patricia stayed inside but within sight, her presence a quiet support. Dad spotted me and his expression cycled through relief, anger, and confusion. Marcus. What the heck is going on? I moved out. We can see that. Why? We've been looking for you all day. Your room is empty, your things are gone, and you're not answering your phone. I'm 18. I don't need permission to move out. Mom climbed out of the car and hurried over. Marcus, honey, if this is about the cruise, we can talk about it. You're upset, I understand, but running away, I didn't run away. I moved out. There's a difference. I have a job, I'm paying rent, and I'm managing fine. You can't just leave, Dad said, his voice rising. You're still in high school. You have responsibilities. Haley's homework isn't my responsibility. My education is my responsibility, which I've handled just fine on my own. This is ridiculous, Haley called from the car, not bothering to get out. You're throwing a tantrum because you didn't get to go on vacation. Grow up. Something in my chest tightened, then released. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm establishing boundaries. You all made it clear where I stand in this family. I'm just accepting that reality and acting accordingly. Where you stand. Mom's voice cracked. You're our son. Of course you matter to us. Do I? Because I've spent the last few years feeling like an inconvenience you tolerated. The cruise was just the clearest example of a pattern I've been ignoring. Haley gets everything. I get whatever's left over, which is usually nothing. So I've removed myself from the equation. Everyone's happier this way. That's not fair, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. We've provided for you. Roof over your head, food, everything you need. Basic legal requirements for a minor. You've done the minimum. Congratulations. Marcus. Mom reached toward me, but I stepped back. Please come home. We can work this out. As a family. A family that took a $12,000 vacation and left me home to do Haley's homework? A family that forgot my 18th birthday completely? A family that only noticed I was gone because Haley's academic consequences became inconvenient? I shook my head. I'm good where I am. You took down all the photos, Mom said suddenly. Every single one. Why would you do that? I removed the ones with me in them. If I'm not important enough to be part of family experiences, I don't need to be part of family memories. Seemed logical. Haley finally emerged from the car, her face flushed. You're being so dramatic. Everyone's treating you like you're the victim here when really you're just selfish. I needed help and you refused because you were mad about a stupid vacation. You needed help passing classes you didn't do the work for all semester. That's not my problem to solve. You're 16, figure it out. I'm going to fail. Her voice hit that pitch that usually preceded tears. Then you'll fail. Actions have consequences. Maybe this is a good learning experience. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. In the hierarchy of our family, I'd never directly refused her anything. I'd absorbed, accommodated, and disappeared myself to make room for her needs. This version of me, the one who said no and meant it, didn't compute. You can't do this, Dad said. You're coming home. Tonight. I'm 18. You can't make me. We're your parents. You think you can just walk away from your family? You walked away first. You've been walking away from me for years. I'm just making it official. Patricia chose that moment to step onto the porch. Folks, I think this conversation has run its course. Marcus is my tenant. He pays his rent on time and causes no problems. If you're not planning to physically drag him off my property, which I'd advise against, then I suggest you leave. Dad looked at her, then at me. This isn't over. Yeah, I said. It is. They left, but not easily. More arguing, more attempts to guilt or command me back. Haley cried, which felt performative even from a distance. Mom made increasingly desperate appeals. Dad oscillated between anger and awkward attempts at reasoning. But eventually, they drove away. I stood on Patricia's porch long after their taillights disappeared, feeling hollowed out and strangely light. You okay? Patricia asked. I don't know yet. That's honest. Come inside. I made soup. The next few days brought more contact attempts. Voicemails I didn't listen to. Texts to my blocked numbers that I only knew about because Mr. Henderson called again to say my parents had contacted the school asking for help locating me. I told him, politely but firmly, that I was safe, employed, and didn't wish to be contacted by my family. He said he'd document the conversation and respect my boundaries. Haley's academic situation deteriorated rapidly. Through the grapevine at school, I still went, determined to finish my senior year strong. I heard she'd been placed on academic probation. My parents had tried arguing with teachers and administration about the late work arrangement, but without the completed assignments, there was nothing to submit. The teachers, frustrated with months of Haley's poor performance and my parents' enabling, held firm. I felt no satisfaction in this. It wasn't about punishing Haley. It was about refusing to be responsible for consequences I hadn't created. She'd had all semester to do her work. My parents had had her entire life to teach her accountability. Their failure wasn't mine to remedy. Work became my anchor. Ron noticed I was reliable and started giving me more responsibility. Training on new equipment, occasionally leading small teams for specific projects. The physical exhaustion translated to dreamless sleep. The routine provided structure. My coworkers became acquaintances, then something approaching friends. I started joining them for lunch breaks, listening to their stories about kids and mortgages and weekend plans. One guy, Dennis, was maybe 40, with a wife and 3 teenage daughters. He cornered me one day during break. Ron mentioned you're living on your own. Family stuff? Something like that. None of my business, but if you need anything, someone to list as a reference, help moving furniture, whatever, let me know. 18's young to be completely solo. I'm managing. Didn't say you weren't. Just saying you don't have to manage alone if you don't want to. These small kindnesses from near strangers meant more than I could articulate. People who owed me nothing offering basic human decency. It highlighted how conditional my parents' support had always been. 3 weeks after I left, my grandmother called. I'd unblocked her number specifically. Your mother phoned me, she said without preamble. Gave me quite an earful about your dramatic exit and how worried they are. Then she asked if I'd seen you. I told her I had not, which is technically true since we've only spoken by phone. Thanks for not telling them where I am. Marcus, I'm not going to pretend I understand the full situation, but I know my daughter. She's a good woman in many ways, but she's always struggled with fairness when it comes to her children. Haley is the baby, the girl, the one who needs more help, or so she's convinced herself. You've always been capable, so she assumed you'd be fine without attention. I'm fine now. Wasn't fine there. I believe it. Your mother loves you, but love isn't always distributed equally or wisely. If you need anything, money, advice, someone to talk to, you call me. Understood? Understood. And Marcus? Happy belated birthday. I mailed you a card, but I suspect it went to your old address. Thanks, Grandma. You're welcome. Don't be a stranger. School remained complicated. Teachers who knew my situation ranged from sympathetic to confused. A few tried mediating, suggesting family counseling or reconciliation. I appreciated the concern but declined. Some wounds weren't meant to heal. Some relationships weren't meant to be preserved. I was learning to accept this without guilt. Haley avoided me in the hallways. When we did cross paths, her expression mixed resentment with something that might have been fear. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the sibling she could manipulate or blame. I was someone who'd walked away, which made me unpredictable. My parents showed up at Patricia's house twice more. Both times, I refused to engage beyond confirming I was fine and asking them to leave. The second time, Dad tried a different approach, softer, almost pleading. I know we made mistakes. I see that now. But you're our son. We want you home. You want things to go back to how they were. I don't. We want different things. What do you want from us? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? An apology? Changed behavior? Acknowledgement of years of imbalance? All of it felt impossible and insufficient simultaneously. I want you to respect my decision to live separately. I want you to stop treating my boundaries as negotiable. Beyond that, I don't know yet. Can we at least talk? Really talk, not like this. Maybe eventually. Not now. They left again, and I felt the weight of that conversation for days. Because part of me did want what Dad offered, connection, understanding, repair. But I'd learned wanting something didn't make it feasible or healthy. Some damage went too deep for quick fixes. Graduation approached. I'd applied to colleges during my senior year, before everything imploded. Acceptance letters arrived at Patricia's address. I'd updated my information with admissions offices. State schools, mostly, places with decent programs and reasonable costs. I had scholarship offers based on my grades and a surprisingly strong essay about overcoming family challenges without directly naming them. I chose a university 4 hours away. Far enough for genuine separation, close enough to drive if needed. The scholarship covered tuition. I'd work summers to handle living expenses. Financial aid would fill the gaps. I'd manage. Sending in my enrollment deposit felt like closing one door and opening another. I was building something new, something mine. The foundation was shaky, but it was mine to stabilize. 2 months after I'd left, Mr. Henderson called with unexpected news. Marcus, your parents have agreed to pay for your college. Full tuition, room and board, books, everything. They wanted me to relay this offer. Why are you telling me and not them? They thought it might be better received through a neutral third party. They're trying, Marcus. In their way. Their way involves using money as a proxy for actual relationship repair? I'm not defending their methods. Just delivering the message. Tell them, thanks, but I've already arranged my financing. I don't need their help. You're turning down a free college education? I'm turning down strings I can't see yet but know exist. I'd rather handle it myself. He sighed. You're more mature than most adults I know. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice for you. But Marcus? Don't close the door completely. People can change. Sometimes they need space to do it. I'm giving them space. And myself. Fair enough. Good luck at state. You'll do well. Summer arrived, and I increased my hours at the warehouse to save aggressively. Ron promoted me to shift supervisor, which came with a raise and more responsibility. I worked 50-hour weeks, came home exhausted, and loved it. The money accumulated. My independence solidified. Patricia and I developed an easy rhythm. She'd cook dinner sometimes and invite me to join her. We'd eat and talk about nothing consequential, the weather, local news, her garden. She told stories about her son, keeping his memory alive through casual mention. I listened and learned that grief didn't have to be dramatic to be profound. One evening, she asked about my plans after summer ended. College. State University. Moving into the dorms in August. You'll do well there. You've got a good head on your shoulders. Thanks. For everything. The room, the space, not asking too many questions. Everyone deserves a safe place to land when they're figuring things out. You've been a good tenant. Quiet, respectful, responsible. You're welcome back during breaks if you need somewhere to stay. I might take you up on that. I hope you do. July brought another unexpected development. Haley contacted me through a friend's phone number I hadn't blocked. Her text was short, "Can we talk? Just us. Not about them." I debated ignoring it. Engaging felt risky. But curiosity won. We met at a coffee shop halfway between Patricia's house and our parents' place. Neutral territory. Haley arrived 10 minutes late, looking different somehow. Less polished. Her hair wasn't styled, and she wore jeans and a plain shirt instead of her usual carefully curated outfits. "Thanks for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What do you want to talk about?" "I failed 2 classes. Have to take summer school to stay on track for graduation. Mom and Dad are furious. Mostly at you, but also at me for putting them in this position." "This is the part where I'm supposed to feel guilty?" "No. This is the part where I tell you I get it now." "Kind of." I waited. "They've been unbearable since you left. Everything I do gets compared to you. How you manage school and work. How you never needed help with homework. How you were responsible. It's like they're seeing you for the first time, which means they're seeing me clearly too, and they don't like what they see. And you want me to come back so things go back to normal?" "No. I want to apologize. For being horrible. For taking advantage of you. For acting like you didn't matter." She paused, stirring her untouched coffee. I knew what I was doing. Maybe not at first, but definitely by the time I was 14 or 15. I knew Mom and Dad favored me. I knew they'd take my side. I used it. I used you. Why? Because I could? Because it felt good to be the important one? I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and I understand why you left. Her apology felt genuine, which somehow made it harder to receive. Anger was easier than empathy. "Okay. That's it? Okay? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That we're good now? We're not. You spent years making my life smaller so yours could be bigger. An apology doesn't erase that." "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it." We sat in silence for a while. The coffee shop hummed with other people's conversations, their lives continuing around our awkward détente. Finally, Haley spoke again. "Are you really not coming back?" "No. I'm going to college in August. I'll probably see you at holidays eventually, but I'm not coming home. That place stopped being home a long time ago." "What about Mom and Dad?" "What about them?" "They're miserable. They keep talking about how they failed you, how they should have seen things differently. Dad actually cried last week. I didn't know he could cry. They're feeling consequences too. Welcome to the club." "You're really not going to give them another chance?" "Maybe someday. When I'm ready. When they've demonstrated actual change instead of just feeling bad. Right now, I need distance." She nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you're braver than I'll ever be." "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being invisible." "Same thing sometimes." We didn't hug when we parted. Didn't make plans to meet again. But something shifted, not reconciliation, exactly, but acknowledgement. She'd taken responsibility, which was more than I'd expected. I told Patricia about the meeting that evening. She listened thoughtfully. "Think you'll talk to her again?" she asked. "Maybe. If she initiates and shows consistent change. I'm not going to chase relationship repair with people who spent years teaching me I wasn't worth their effort." That's wise. Hard, but wise. The remaining weeks of summer passed quickly. I packed for college, said goodbye to coworkers who'd become friends, and prepared for the next chapter. Ron shook my hand on my last day and told me I had a job waiting if I wanted to work breaks. Dennis and a few others took me out for lunch, offering advice and encouragement. "You're going to do great things," Dennis said. "Just remember where you came from. Not your family stuff, I mean remember you survived that. You're stronger than you think." Moving day arrived hot and humid. Patricia helped me load my car, which now contained everything I owned, still just a few bags, plus some new necessities accumulated over the months. She pressed an envelope into my hands. "Don't open it until you get there," she said. "Just a little something to help you settle in. Patricia, I've already done what I wanted to do. Let an old woman feel useful." I hugged her, surprising us both. "Thank you. For everything." "You're welcome, Marcus. You've got my number. Use it." The drive to campus felt surreal. 4 hours of highway, rolling through landscapes that gradually flattened into the plains surrounding State University. I'd visited once for orientation, but this felt different. Permanent. Chosen. My dorm room was small and bare, shared with a roommate who wouldn't arrive until the next day. I unpacked slowly, arranging my few possessions to make the space feel inhabited. Then I remembered Patricia's envelope. Inside was $500 in cash and a note in her careful handwriting, for emergencies, textbooks, or pizza at 2 a.m. when you're stressed about exams. You've earned the right to be a normal college student. Don't forget to enjoy some of it. Patricia. I sat on my new bed in my new room in my new life and cried for the first time since leaving home. Not from sadness, exactly. From relief. From gratitude. From the overwhelming realization that I'd actually done it. I'd walked away from a situation that diminished me and built something better. Orientation week introduced me to hundreds of new faces, new routines, new possibilities. I met people who knew nothing about my family situation, who saw me as a blank slate. I joined a study group. Attended campus events. Started to imagine a future unshackled from the past. 3 weeks into the semester, my grandmother called. How's college treating you? Really well, actually. Classes are challenging but manageable. I like my roommate. Things are good. I'm glad to hear it. Listen, I talked to your mother yesterday. She asked about you. I told her you were doing fine and suggested she needed to respect your space. She didn't take it well, but she's thinking about what I said. Okay, Marcus, I'm not pushing you to reconnect before you're ready. But eventually, if you can, consider it. Not for them, for you. Carrying that kind of anger and hurt long term will eat at you. When you're ready, on your terms, maybe leave the door cracked open. Maybe. That's all I'm asking. Meanwhile, keep being you. You're doing something remarkable, building a life from scratch at 18. I'm proud of you. Those words landed differently than they would have from my parents. My grandmother's pride was earned through observation, not biological obligation. She'd seen me make hard choices and respected them. Thanks, Grandma. That means a lot. You're welcome. Now go study or socialize or whatever college students do. I'll call you next month. The semester unfolded in a rhythm of classes, studying, and slowly learning to be a person independent of my family's dysfunction. I worked part-time at the campus library to supplement my finances. Made friends with people in my major. Joined a club focused on community service, finding satisfaction in helping others navigate challenges. My roommate, a guy named Tyler from a small town upstate, became a steady presence. We weren't best friends, but we cohabitated well. One night, over cheap takeout, he asked about my family. You never mentioned them. Everything okay? Complicated, I said. We're not in contact right now. By choice? Mine. That's rough. But sometimes necessary. My older brother cut off our dad a few years ago. Dad was a mean drinker. My brother stayed gone until Dad got sober and stayed that way for a year. They're rebuilding now, but it took time and real change. Did it work? The rebuilding? Mostly. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. I guess the point is, sometimes distance is what it takes for people to see clearly. Doesn't mean you owe them reconciliation, though. Just means it's possible if everyone involved actually does the work. That's the question, whether they'll do the work or just want me to come back so things feel normal again. Yeah. Big difference between those two things. Thanksgiving approached, and I dreaded the question everyone asked, what are you doing for break? I'd made plans to stay on campus, working extra library hours and enjoying the quiet. Patricia had invited me to visit, which I planned to do for a few days. But 2 weeks before the holiday, I received a letter. Actual postal mail, handwritten. My mother's handwriting. I stared at it for a day before opening it. When I finally did, the letter was 3 pages long, front and back. Her handwriting was careful, like she'd drafted it multiple times. Marcus, it began. I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I have the right to ask you to. But I need to try. She detailed memories I'd forgotten, moments of my childhood when she'd been present, attentive, proud. Then she acknowledged when things changed, how Haley's needs seemed more urgent, more immediate. How she'd convinced herself I was fine because I never complained. How that narrative became a convenient excuse to overlook imbalance. I see it now, she wrote. How we made you responsible for problems you didn't create. How we celebrated Haley's achievements while taking yours for granted. How we built a family structure that prioritized her comfort over your well-being. I don't have an excuse that makes this okay. I can only tell you I'm sorry and I'm trying to understand how we got here. She didn't ask me to come home. Didn't plead or guilt. Just apologized and said she understood if I never wanted a relationship with them again. She included her new cell phone number, not the family plan, her own separate line, and said I could contact her there if and when I was ready. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Didn't respond immediately. Needed time to process whether the apology felt genuine or strategic. A week later, another letter arrived. This one from my father. His was shorter, more stilted. Dad had never been comfortable with emotional expression. But he tried. I thought I was teaching you independence by expecting you to handle things on your own. I thought I was preparing you for life. I was wrong. I was taking the easy path and calling it parenting. You deserved better. You deserved equal attention, celebration, and support. I'm sorry I didn't give you that. He didn't ask for anything either. Just apologized and said he respected my decision to create distance. I showed both letters to Tyler, who read them carefully. They sound sincere, he said. But sincerity isn't the same as change. Actions matter more than words. That's what I keep thinking. But part of me wants to believe them. Then maybe give them a chance to prove it. Not by going home or resuming regular contact, but by watching from a distance. See if they maintain this energy or if it fades when you don't immediately respond. It was good advice. I didn't respond to either letter but kept them. Evidence of something, an attempt, at least. December arrived with finals and snow. I threw myself into exams, grateful for the distraction. My grades were strong, which felt validating. I was succeeding on my own terms, in an environment where my efforts were recognized. Christmas break approached, and I made plans to spend it with Patricia. She'd invited me enthusiastically, and the idea of her quiet house felt far more appealing than any alternative. But 3 days before I was scheduled to drive to her place, Haley called. I'd never blocked her new number, mostly out of curiosity. "Hey," she said when I answered. "I know you're probably busy with finals and stuff, but I wanted to ask you something." "I'm listening." "Would you consider coming to dinner? Just dinner, one evening during break. At a restaurant, not at home. Me, you, Mom, and Dad. Neutral territory. We could just talk. Civilly." "Why?" "Because we all need to start somewhere. The letters were a start, but they're one way. This would be two-way. Or four-way, I guess. I don't know if I'm ready for that." "I get it. But think about it. I know we don't deserve another chance. I know we need to prove we're different. This is me asking for an opportunity to start proving it. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Thanks, Marcus." She hung up, and I sat with the request for hours. Part of me wanted to refuse immediately, maintain boundaries, protect myself, avoid potential disappointment. But another part acknowledged the courage it took for her to call. The consistency of her changed behavior. The fact that my parents had written letters without demanding responses. I called Patricia. "Hypothetically," I said, "if people who hurt you made efforts to apologize and change, at what point do you give them a chance to prove it?" "Hypothetically," she replied, "you give them that chance when you're ready, not when they are. And you give it in small doses. One dinner doesn't mean you're obligated to weekly calls or holiday visits. It's just one dinner. You can always walk away again if needed." "So you think I should do it?" "I think you should do what feels right for you. But I also think avoiding something out of fear isn't quite the same as avoiding something because it's unhealthy. Figure out which one this is." I thought about it for another day. Then I called Haley back. "One dinner," I said. "Public place. 2 hours maximum. I'm not committing to anything beyond that." "Thank you," she said, and she sounded genuinely relieved. "I'll set it up and text you details." The dinner happened 3 days after Christmas at a mid-range restaurant attached to a hotel. I arrived first, deliberately. Wanted the choice of seat, the control of being the one others approached rather than the one approaching. They arrived together, looking nervous. Mom had new glasses and less makeup than I remembered her wearing. Dad had gone gray at the temples. Haley wore a simple sweater and jeans, nothing flashy. They sat down carefully, like they were afraid sudden movements might spook me. For a few minutes, we just looked at menus and ordered drinks. The silence felt heavy but not hostile. Dad spoke first. "Thank you for agreeing to this." "I haven't agreed to anything except dinner," I said. "This isn't reconciliation. It's conversation." "We understand," Mom said quickly. "We just want to talk. To listen, really. If you're willing to let us." I studied them, looking for performance, for manipulation. Saw only discomfort and genuine contrition. It didn't erase the past, but it was something. "Okay. So talk." They didn't bombard me with excuses or justifications. Instead, they asked questions. How was school? Where was I living? What was I studying? They listened to my answers without interrupting or trying to insert themselves into my narrative. Haley asked about my roommate, my classes, whether I'd made friends. The questions felt stiff but earnest, like she'd rehearsed. When the food came, Mom said quietly, "We've been going to family therapy. The three of us. And individually. The therapist helped us see patterns we'd been blind to. It's been difficult but necessary." "Good for you," I said, and meant it without sarcasm. "That takes work." "We should have done it years ago," Dad added. "Before it got to the point of you having to leave. We failed you, Marcus. We're trying to understand why and how to be better." Being better means respecting my boundaries. Not just now, but ongoing. It means accepting I might never want the kind of family closeness you picture. It means proving through actions, not words, that you've changed. "We know," Haley said. "That's what we're trying to do. Starting with respecting you enough to not demand forgiveness or immediate trust." The dinner lasted exactly 2 hours. We talked about neutral topics mostly, with occasional ventures into heavier territory. They didn't ask when I'd visit home. Didn't pressure me to attend future holidays. Didn't try to buy my affection with offers of money or gifts. When we parted in the parking lot, Mom hugged me briefly. Dad shook my hand. Haley gave me a small wave. Then they drove away, and I sat in my car processing what had happened. It wasn't healing. It wasn't resolution. But it was different from before, which counted for something. I drove to Patricia's house and told her about the dinner. She listened thoughtfully. "How do you feel?" she asked. Uncertain. Cautiously hopeful. Still guarded. All reasonable reactions. Keep being uncertain and guarded. Hope is fine, but let them earn your trust slowly. I spent the rest of break with Patricia, working at a temporary job Ron had arranged at the warehouse, and preparing for spring semester. The dinner with my family became a data point rather than a turning point, something to consider as part of a larger pattern I'd need to observe over time. They sent occasional texts, brief and respectful. Updates on mundane things, never demanding responses. I replied sometimes, keeping my messages equally brief. Baby steps towards something that might eventually resemble a functional relationship. College resumed, and life continued in its new rhythm. I declared my major, made plans for summer internships, started thinking about post-graduation possibilities. My world expanded beyond the narrow confines of my childhood home's dysfunction. I don't know if my family will ever fully understand what they did or how deeply it affected me. I don't know if we'll rebuild anything resembling a close relationship. But I know I survived. I know I chose myself when nobody else would. I know I'm building a life that's mine, uncompromised by others' expectations or manipulations. Last week, I got another letter from Mom. Inside was a single photo, me as a child, maybe 7 years old, grinning at the camera while holding a ridiculously large ice cream cone. On the back, she'd written, "Found this while organizing photos. Wanted you to have it. We're sorry we made you feel like you had to remove yourself from our memories to be seen." I put the photo on my desk, next to my college ID and a picture of Patricia in her garden. Different pieces of my life, existing together without conflict. I don't know what comes next. The story isn't over, it's just different now. I'm different now. The scared, invisible 17-year-old who stood in the kitchen while his family packed for a vacation without him doesn't exist anymore. In his place is someone who knows his worth, who maintains his boundaries, who understands that sometimes walking away is the bravest and healthiest choice. My parents packed their suitcases for my sister's sweet 16 while I stood in the doorway, confused about why my bags weren't ready. 8 days later, I was gone and every photo of me had disappeared from their walls. It was the end of one story and the beginning of another. This is the other story. Mine. And I'm still writing it.